A very warm welcome to all of you. Today we will be learning about the different types of parasites. Let us briefly discuss what is parasitism. Parasitism is a type of symbiosis and it is an interspecific symbiosis. That is, the association is between two species and out of which one of them is called the parasite and the other one is called as the host. The parasite lives on or within the host for a significant period of its life and it exploits the host for food, shelter, or in order to complete its life cycle. Today our topic is on the different types of parasites. Based on their habit, habitat, nutrition, life cycles, parasites can be classified into many different types. Given below are some of the categories into which they are classified. However, we have to remember that a single parasite, for example, Plasmodium, which is a malarial parasite, can come into many different categories at the same time. Plasmodium can be an endoparasite, it can be a permanent parasite, it can be a microparasite, it can be a biotroph, and so on. Classifying parasites helps us during the study of parasitology. The first category to which parasites belong are endoparasites and ectoparasites. Endoparasites are those parasites which live within the internal organs or the tissues or within the cell of its host, and they gain entrance through the tissue or through consumption of raw or uncontaminated food. Example, Ancylostoma duodenum. Ectoparasites are those parasites which live on the body surface of the host and they have to have elaborate mechanisms and strategies for finding their host. Example, mites, ticks, fleas. In the image given, you can see a tick which basically waits on the tip of grass or other leaves waiting for a warm-blooded host to pass by. Another way of classifying parasites is based on their size. Macroparasites are those parasites which are easily visible to the naked eye and they are multicellular. For example, helminth parasites like Ascaris. On the other hand, microparasites are those which are small, they are usually unicellular and they are invisible to the naked eye. For example, protozoan parasites like Trypanosoma. Based on their location within the body of the host, we can classify them as intracellular or extracellular parasites. Parasites which live within the cell of the host are known as intracellular. Plasmodium lives inside the RBC of human beings, so they are intracellular, whereas Ascaris lives within the digestive system, so they live outside the cell of the host. They are called as extracellular parasites. Based on the amount of time they spent, they can be classified as temporary or permanent parasites. Temporary parasites are those parasites which visit their host only for a short period of time in order to feed. Mites, ticks, leeches, bedbugs, etc. are temporary parasites. You can see the image of leech on the left hand side, whereas you can see a bedbug on the right hand side. Permanent parasites, on the other hand, spend their entire life cycle or a part of their life cycle within the body of the host. An example of a permanent parasite is tapeworm. A tapeworm has to spend its life cycle either within the pig or within the body of the human being. Another way of classifying parasites is as facultative parasites or obligatory parasites. Facultative parasites are those parasites which can survive outside the body of the host, but however, if they have access to a host, they become parasitic. You can say they are opportunistic as far as their nutrition is concerned. An example of a facultative parasite is the parasitic nematode Strongyloides stercoralis, which can be free-living as well as parasitic. Obligatory parasites are those parasites which are totally dependent on their host for food, shelter, and or protection. They cannot survive without the host. An example is a malarial parasite, Plasmodium. Then we have accidental parasites and wandering or aberrant parasites. Accidental parasites are those parasites which happen to infect unusual hosts other than the normal definitive host. An example is the swine influenza virus, which causes swine flu and is usually found to infect pigs. However, occasionally it can infect human beings, especially when human beings come in close contact with infected pigs, and they can cause swine flu in human beings. Wandering or aberrant parasites. These parasites, instead of arriving at the site of infection in the definitive host, will reach an unusual place as a dead end, and they will be unable to complete their life cycle. For example, tapeworm, Taenia solium, is usually found in the small intestine of human beings. However, it can migrate to the brain and it can remain there in the form of a cyst, causing a disease called cysticercosis. The tapeworm is not able to complete its life cycle in the brain of human beings, and hence it's a dead end for the parasite. Monogenic parasites. Monogenic parasites complete their whole life cycle in one host. For example, Entamoeba histolytica, in which human being is the only host. Digenetic parasites usually need two hosts to complete their entire life cycle, a primary host and a secondary host. The primary host is the host in which the animal completes its sexual part of the life cycle, whereas the secondary host is the one where it will complete the asexual part of the life cycle. Example, Plasmodium vivax, which is a malarial parasite, needs two hosts. One is mosquito and the second host is human beings. As can be seen from the image below, the gametogenesis in Plasmodium takes place in mosquito, whereas in human beings the asexual part of the life cycle is completed. Then we have social parasites. It is also known as brood parasitism or nest parasitism, where one individual who is known as the brood parasite will exploit the parental care provided by another who is known as the host. So here, parasite is taking advantage of the interaction between members of a social host species. The hosts usually will raise the young of the brood parasite, typically at the expense of their own young. There are two types of social parasites depending on who is exploited. Conspecific brood parasitism. Here, an individual will deposit eggs in the nests or broods of another individual of the same species. Many ducks and waterfowls show this type of parasitism, where one female duck will lay eggs in the nest of another female duck belonging to the same species, and the second duck, who is known as a host, will end up taking care of the young ones of the brood parasite. You have interspecific brood parasitism, in which one individual, who is the brood parasite, will lay eggs in the nest of another animal belonging to a different species. Seen below is the nest, in which you can see a clutch of 6 eggs, out of which 5 look similar, whereas the 6th one looks very different. The 6th egg has been laid by a brood parasite, and the egg will be hatched and taken care of by the host. This is a very common example of cuckoo bird, which lays its eggs in a crow's nest. The cuckoo bird eggs usually hatch out first and is taken care of by the crow. Another type of parasitism is kleptoparasitism. The word klepto means to steal. So in this type of parasitism, the parasite steals the food that the host either has caught or otherwise prepared. You can see a bear trying to raid a honey hive in order to steal the honey. In this slide, you can see a form of kleptoparasitism in which a cheetah has killed an impala. It has eaten part of its catch. However, the remaining impala becomes a target for kleptoparasitism by hyenas, who drive off the cheetah and are feeding on the impala in the second image. So here, the hyenas have stolen the catch from cheetah. There are parasites which are known as biotrophic parasites. Such parasites cannot survive in a dead host and therefore need to keep their host alive. Many viruses, for example, are biotrophic because they need to use the host's genetic and cellular mechanisms to multiply. If the host dies, the parasite also dies. SARS-CoV-2, which caused COVID-19, is an example of a biotrophic parasite. In contrast to this, you have necrotrophic parasites, which basically use another organism's tissues for their own nutritional benefit until the host dies from loss of needed tissues or nutrients. Many fungi like Pythium and Fusarium are examples of necrotrophic fungi. They cause diseases like grey mold, soft rot in dead tissues. Finally, when we summarize this topic, we can say that there are many ways in which parasites can be classified based on their feeding habits, habitat, life cycle, location within or on the body of the host. And each species of parasite will fit into many categories at the same time. With that, we come to the end of type of parasites. Happy learning and have a nice day.